Hey guys, so I wanted to make this video for contractors in general, really, but this one is specifically about basement waterproofing. So, what we're going to go over is campaign structure, right? Because that's super important when you're running Google ads. You want to make sure that you're targeting the right keywords, that you have everything set up, and you want to make sure that your ad groups are going to be relevant to the campaign you're running. Right? So, and then we're going to talk about negative keywords, right? Because you'll find that if you don't do negative keywords, you're going to see the clicks that you get for things like do it yourself, or we'll use basement waterproofing as the example, do it yourself, or there's wetness in my basement, or you know, how to dry the basement after rain, and like how to do it yourself, maybe something like Home Depot basement waterproofing items, so you want to target and not target specific keywords. So when you do a negative keyword, what you're telling Google is do not show my ad for these kinds of keywords, right? Because if people are looking up do it yourself or anything, for in this case waterproofing, and they click on it, it's still going to cost you money. So the other thing we want to talk about is targeting affluent area codes, right? A lot of people don't talk about this, but it's very important. It's kind of a secret we have in a way, because people know about it, but a lot of people don't put it out there. Of course, you want to target your general service area, but you also want to make sure that if there's an affluent neighborhood, like right outside what you would normally consider your service area, you want to add that in, because obviously we want people with budget, people that can afford your service. So we'll keep going, right? So start simple, right, with one campaign. So the reason why we use one campaign, right, is because we want to make sure that any kind of change we have to make in the future, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to what it does for performance, pretty much, right? We don't want to make everything so complex that if we make a change, we don't know, what's working and what's not. Like, for example, if we have 3 different campaigns, right, and we change, we added negative keywords to one of the campaigns, right? We have to do that to all of them. And then maybe that's not the best way to go for all of them, right? Maybe one of them, that negative keyword is kind of relevant for the other ad. Or we pull back the budget for one of the campaigns, right? And now it starts going better. So we pull back the budget for the other 2, and then those start performing worse. Now you have 3 different campaigns that you have to go through and make sure you're optimizing, right? It just makes things very difficult to maintain. So we start with one campaign, right? And we do 5 to 8 ad groups, right? Very focused ad groups. We want to make sure that we're targeting specific keywords. For example, for basement waterproofing, right? What we would do is we'd have one for foundation crack repair, one for waterproofing, one for sump pump, one for French drain systems. And we keep those ad groups, right, together, keep them tight. In this way, the reason why this is so powerful is the ads that we're running, we can make sure that our copy, what people see when they click on the ads, is very relevant to the exact service that we're offering. Same thing with the landing page, right? When they click through and they end up on that site, we want to make sure that if they click through and they click through for sump pump, that the word sump pump is right in front of their face, right? So they know they're in the right place. They know you're the person to help. Obviously, we want other things on that landing page, but you want the title and the copy of the ad to be very, very relevant to what you're targeting and the kind of job you're targeting per ad group. So these are just a couple examples of the themes, right? We have waterproofing, basement waterproofing near me, basement leak repair, basement ceiling contractor, crack repair, wall crack injection, foundation crack repair, leaking wall fix, sump pumps, sump pump installation, sump pump replacement, battery backup install, etc., right? So you gotta get the point. So we have exact phrase and broad match, right? So exact match actually isn't exact match. I know that's kind of contradicting, but exact match for Google, and this has changed. It used to be exactly the match, but people were taking advantage of it, and it was leaving some people out because some people would just go after a specific keyword that was working really well, and they would just outbid everybody and get all the jobs, right? Google is very much about fairness. Google wants to make sure that it spreads the jobs equally among people, as long as you also have to know what you're doing, obviously, and there's a lot to it, but they want to make sure that it's at the very least fair, right? So then you have phrase match. Phrase match. So, by the way, the thing with exact match is, no, it doesn't do exactly the keyword now. Now it will do something very close, right? So if you do, for example, basement waterproofing near me, right, and you live in Boston, Massachusetts, for example, if someone types in basement waterproofing Boston, Massachusetts, and you're targeting waterproofing basements near me, they will still show your ad for the basement waterproofing Boston, Massachusetts. So anything that's it's relevant still to exactly the keyword that you have, very close, tight, right? So one saying near me, which is your location, and if your location is Boston, then if they type in Boston, it will also show up for that. The other thing is phrase match. Phrase match is supposed to be close variants, right? So you type in sump pumps, right? Sump pumps near me, right? So then if someone types in sump pump installation near me, you might pop up for that if you're targeting phrase match for that keyword. And broad match is just how it sounds, right? You could put battery backup install in broad match, right? And it might give you something like auto battery. So broad match, to be honest, we don't use much of that at all. The only time we would use broad match is if we had excess ad spend and we were looking to scale and kind of branch out and offer different kinds of services. So why negative keywords matter? We kind of already went over this, but yeah, you don't want to be doing do-it-yourself keywords, jobs, right? Or products or unrelated trades, right? Like if you are a basement waterproofer, you don't want to be getting clicks for roofing, leaky roofs, right? Because someone's targeting basement leaks. So this is why, yes, you want negative keywords to tell Google what not to show you for. And it's just important as telling Google what to show you for. So, yeah, and then, okay, so here's where we get into targeting affluent area codes, right? Targeting affluent area codes focuses spend on higher value homes more likely to invest in full waterproofing projects. By concentrating marketing efforts in upscale neighborhoods, you reach homeowners with greater purchasing power and willingness to invest in comprehensive basement solutions. This strategic approach maximizes return on ad spend by prioritizing areas where demand for premium waterproofing service is the highest, meaning these people can pay. So for obvious reasons, it's very important to make sure you're targeting the area codes that have the most money. So budgets and bidding to start. Yeah, we want to start with a budget that's healthy, right? Because we need in the beginning to get data. And then in the beginning, it is about testing, but we will see leads come in. But it's more about testing to see what's working better so we can optimize and edit and make things work perfectly. So right here, we get into tracking, right? So we have phone call leads, right? Which is something that we can track and we can attribute it as a conversion to tell Google, hey, this person was a good lead, because what you do is you find these conversions that you want to track and you feed them back into Google so Google knows, okay, that's a good lead. And Google knows people, right? They collect data on everybody. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's what they do. So they know you very well. So when a lead makes a phone call, right, you can do it for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, however long they stay on the phone. We can count that as a conversion. We can choose how long they're on the phone up until when we want to start counting it as a conversion. So a phone call lead, right, say they call, it lasts over 60 seconds. Now Google will record that as a conversion and then send that back into Google, right? So Google can learn, okay, this was a lead, and then Google will then target people that are like that person, that have the same buying patterns and have the same, budgets and things like that. Same thing with form submissions, right? Every form submission, you can choose to tell Google that was a conversion and then send it back to conversions, and then same thing. Google will then learn from that. So yeah, so for the 7-day, right, 7-day setup, that's what we do. day one, right, we're launching, right? So we'll get everything launched. Obviously, we need about a week before that to get everything set up. Days 2 to 3, we're going to start adding negatives because some of them are going to pop up. There's no way to get every negative that there is right up front, right? You're going to have to see a few negatives to know that they're there. So day 2 and 3 is when we take care of that, whatever we see. And then day 4 to 5, we want to start looking at how each keyword is performing. And then we're going to pause the keywords that have gotten no clicks, right? Because we don't want to stay targeting a keyword that's not going to perform well. And then day 7, right, we can kind of start getting an idea of what the cost per lead is and then adjust the budget to that, right? So if we're only spending $15 per lead and we know that, we know people are converting for that much and we're spending $80 a day, right, we might want to bring it back a little bit or up it a little bit, right? If we know, okay, we want even more leads. But having that cost per lead is very important. Okay, guys, well, that's it for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, thanks for watching.